Hello, everybody. So today finishes out module 4, kind of makes the halfway point as far as lectures. As the homework for this week's not due till next Monday, but that'll actually be the halfway point. Got a few things to cover. The main topic for today will finish out the big parts of appearance on the website. There's still little things we need to work in. And then little tweaks we can do at the end, animations. We still need to see tables and how to do input forms and a few other things. The big one is layouts. So you probably noticed on all the sites so far, I can just look at the one from the other day, for example, which I already deleted on my local computer. Like the one from the other day. There's a whole bunch of stuff on that page, but it's all stacked top to bottom. There's plenty of room over on the right-hand side where we could have fit a lot of those paragraphs because none of them need very much space. But all that space on the right is kind of wasted. Everything just stacks top to bottom. So the next thing is layouts, so that we have some things go all the way across, like the main header, and then maybe a couple columns underneath that, and other stuff that goes all the way across, or some stuff on the left, some stuff on the right, and get some horizontal positioning in there as well. Makes a big difference on the sites. That's less big thing. Still other things to look at. Tables make stuff look nice. A few little features that we fit in at the end, little tricks that'll be useful. Animations make a big deal because that should be counted as a big thing when it's not done. We open it and it changes slightly and looks really nice. We can do animations in CSS, so we'll see that at some point. But for today, the big thing's layout. And after that, I wanted to look at if time allows, embedding things. That actually goes with a later section, but I wanted to go ahead and do it because the textbook uses sort of an old way of doing it. Sentences, the same thing we saw with the picture tag, just with videos and audio. But we can also just, most videos are going to be stored on YouTube. We just go get them there. A lot of the audio files we want, we don't need them locally. We're on the same internet as Spotify is already storing, and we can just use that one. On a couple people's projects, PayPal buttons. People mentioned like connecting back to PayPal, and then people can get to that. And it's like, well, I put in the comments on the proposals when I was doing those this morning. That anybody that mentioned that, it's like, well, we can put a PayPal button. We can put that right on your site. That's the second thing on today's list. So we're pretty much, we're almost to it, but layouts are a big deal. So that one might be Monday before we get to that, depending on how much time there is, because it's an active subject. We want to make sure there's plenty of time to do stuff in that block that should already be marked off on your schedule for SDEV 153, right? Otherwise, by now you should have heard from me about the proposal, either approving it or asking for clarification, suggesting little edits that would make it more feasible for your class. And if you got those comments in the gradebook, if you comment back in the gradebook, I don't see the comments, and I don't get notified about the comments in the gradebook. So I put them there because I'm pretty sure y'all are going to look at the gradebook. But I don't get notified about those comments, so I don't always see them. Or if you reply back through the comments, it might be a while before I've seen it if I've already graded that. So send me an email if there's some follow-up on those things. Next thing to do is set up a web page, draw a quick wireframe. We haven't done that in a couple. I often combine wireframes and storyboards into one thing. We talk about the principles of design, where those, well, a couple of them, contrast and proximity. White space flows heavily into both of those, spread things out. So if they're clearly not related to each other, White space can be a big deal. That's what wireframes are. Storyboards have a little bit more information, maybe some colors in them. It's still very basic. So I tend to combine the two. So everything we've seen so far will have some big header up at the top, little footer at the bottom of the page. Oops, that's not how to spell footer. I wasn't even close on that word. A footer down at the bottom. Maybe we'll stick something down the side. I like to use an aside tag for that. I don't know if that's what the name is supposed to go for, but that always makes me think of, it seems an appropriate name for ad space, which we will see that sometimes too. That's a nice one. You have a site that people are going to come look at. In a lot of ways, Google is actually holding back the marketing firms. If they knew you were taking a website development class, they would already have reached out to you to try and get you to put ads. So basically, as far as monetizing the stuff in this course, it's a matter of just telling Google to do that. They'll give you some code that you can copy and paste into your HTML file, and then you cache it, and then tell them where to send the check. Everybody. And then every time somebody goes to your site, you get a 1 to 3 pennies or something. There you go. Really, really easy content to monetize. Most of the other classes don't go through monetization as easily as SDEV 153 class does here. And yeah, and you'll see how easy it is. We'll cover that. I think it's in my notes for when we get to e-commerce. But in a lot of ways, places like Google are holding them back. Marketing firms would have already liked to reach out to you because they know at the bare minimum your instructor has to look at your homework assignments. So that's one person that will see the advertising. I guess in here, well, what we've done so far, that would take up our whole page, right? So then over here, we'd have our content. Maybe we'll kind of look at different columns. Maybe 2 columns, 3 columns. We're gonna go have some back and forth in that, or something like that. 3 columns under the header and things positioned horizontally, not just vertically. And there's different ways we can get to that. Different ways we can set it up. All have advantages and disadvantages, and best thing to do is probably just jump in and see how to do it. And then afterwards, y'all can practice around, see which ones you like. Usually we can mix and match them. I'll get to that in just a second. So as always, open up a text editor and start making our HTML files. Layout. That sounds like a good name for it. So the first one is obviously index.html. And I realized something that I did. I was making a quick example for a couple people that were having trouble with things. So I just went ahead and made a video last night and sent an email to a couple people that have been having trouble with something with the domain host. Walked through those steps and noticed that I did something when I made the test site that I should be doing in class. Should probably show you something that I found is really, really good for setting up sites. The one thing about our website, I'm sure you've noticed it from visiting sites and noticing your homework, the stuff at the top of the page is always identical. That's how we know it's on the same site. The big header, the navigation section. So I'll usually create that first. I'll use predictive text here, set this up. I'm getting rid of the meta tags because we haven't talked about those yet. And start setting up the top of this page, which I guess really quick, I'll add in. Hopefully that shows with a small video. Add a nav section right underneath the header. Fairly typical appearance thing. And we have a couple pages that all look roughly the same. And we'll link back and forth between them, which is something we're going to do on most websites. So setting that up is pretty easy. We'll have our header, HTML header element. Or is it not predictive? There it is. Header, CSS layouts. That's what we're looking at here. And right under that, I'll stick in a nav section with a link links to a couple other pages. Maybe href equals index.html, homepage, and I want to space these out a little, so I'll go in a little space. Non-breaking space, we saw that talking about special characters, so there's extra little room between them. Maybe two of them. Copy that, paste it in a couple times. Another anchor tag, href to absolute positioning, absolute.html. Absolute positions. Href equals, after that, we'll look at relative positions. Floating, that's the one I generally prefer, but I think a lot of that is because I've just done more of that. That's what I always did before Flex and Grid were added into CSS. Floating and flexible.html, CSS Flex, and href equals grid.html, which would be CSS grids. And I'll grab those spaces and place those in between each one of those links to spread them out a little bit. So nothing new there, and that's what we're getting ready to look at. We have different ways of doing it. A lot of times we can mix and match them. There's sort of restrictions on, there is a restriction we have to worry about on mixing. It's not really a restriction, it won't go in error, but it will become highly difficult to work with if we don't approach one thing in a certain way. The CSS Flex and CSS Grid, that's what I've used since the first time I taught this course to introduce the best reference site. Looked at a couple ones. We looked at the official one and Mozilla. A lot of people know their names for things on the internet. They have pretty good reference, but they're so big they can't drift very far from the standards. They don't need to get too far. So when we get down to the CSS and Flex and CSS Grid, I'll introduce the best reference for CSS. Like overwhelmingly best. It's tremendously better than all the others. And up to date, we'll see. We'll get there in a minute. So that part of the page is always going to be the same. And so will the style sheet. Let's see, let's add a title in. Page layouts. That sounds good. And link to the style sheet. Oops, I didn't do that. Link, the relevance is this a style sheet. And the location, I'll call it layout.css. And probably go ahead and create that first. Control N on my text editor. I think Control N is a new file on most text editors. And then save this as a CSS file so that it starts changing colors right from the beginning. Layout.css, I think that's what I called it. Yep. HTML up. I can come back and do that. So let's throw in a background color, body, background image, a linear gradient, maybe 62 degrees. That goes from sky blue to coral. Actually, I made those, just picked two random colors last night and I thought it looked kind of good when I did that. Sky blue, and we'll go take sky blue to 65% the way across so that it's not right in the middle since there's only two colors. And a general rule for anything in software development is run a test every chance you get. Don't do a whole bunch of things and then run a test. Man, dig back through, and CSS can be particularly tricky. So from some of the emails I've got so far, I told a joke, I think the first day, classic programming joke about CSS. Two CSS properties walk into a bar, and a bar stool and a different bar falls over. Some of the emails I've seen, some of y'all probably get that joke. Strange things will happen, and we'll get weird changes somewhere, and that's not even the one that's not the element where the weird stuff's happening isn't even connected to the element where the CSS properties are changing it, as far as we can see. So you don't want to go too far ahead before you run the test. And that way you can only, I guess the ideal is if you can test every single line and there's an error, you know exactly which line that error happened in. So it's easier to go back. You don't want to go too far before testing. So we got a background color, I guess. And 30 degrees isn't nice. It looks a little flat. I was expecting something more angled.
Mine looks like this.
Yes, that's the one I was getting ready to address. Was negative 23 given. Hope that turned it around. It's 23 given. I was wanting that to go in the corner, but I guess it kind of is. See that, how it's happening over and over and over again? This is a rule I typed on, I think, like early in the first day. We only needed that much space for the content. So that's all I used. But then the rest of that body, it just made a new one. Like, we don't need this, we'll just start to roll over. It looks kind of funny. So a nice little workaround for that, I like to always do this first anyway, is just in the HTML element, because everything is a child of HTML. So we'll all inherit from this. I'll set the minimum height to 100%. So saying no matter what the contents do, the computer is not allowed to decide how tall the page is. It takes the whole screen every time, is what that's saying, because we'll get things like this where the computer will decide it doesn't need the whole screen and it starts to look strange. So I reload that, then we get those colors. Kind of fading off to that. If I make that negative 62, like I was originally thinking of. Oh, negative. It is just 62. May have to try a couple numbers. Okay, so 62 is way up there. I was trying to go to the bottom corners, kind of like a sunset. I guess that would have a nice sky. It would have looked nice on the one that was supposed to look sky-like. So 62 start just up there, so we need to come all the way around the circle. 270, somewhere between 270 and 360. So maybe 325, 321. Whoops. Type that in the right place. Should put it down in the bottom corner. Nope, that's in it way over there. And notice how there's still, just sat there and talked out what it was doing out loud, and it seems to still seem to do something different. I'm gonna go back to no angle at all. Okay, so there's what it is by default. I'll move it over just a little so that it's in that bottom corner. So let's try 15 degrees. And moved it way up there. You'll notice, you'll find things like that seem to happen quite a bit. The angles aren't what we would expect, right? Because you go from the bottom of the screen to that top corner, that's not a 15-degree angle. That's way more than 15 degrees. So there's a lot of trial and error involved in this. What's 1 degree do? That's in someplace different altogether. So play around with those numbers, see what you can find with them. What if I take off degree and say, just put 15 there, what does it do? Just completely crashes then. So try various trial and error, see which ones you like. I'll just put it back up in the corner, 23 degrees, and that'll be good enough for us. We don't need to spend a lot of time with it, but after we talked about that in class, you probably haven't gone through and tried different angles to see that it's not a circle around our screen. And try some different things, see what you find, and see how that works. We got our header section. Did I put anything in there? I should put the paragraph tags around it because that will give us more control over that text directly. And if you're wondering why I didn't do the like H1 tag or something, it's so I could set up the size. So header, we can do descendant selectors. So a paragraph inside of a header. Set that with a font size of 32 point and set weight to be bolder. Medium bold level. This is a nice little header. Nice little header. There are navigations there. And we're going to start moving things around. So I'm going to add a header in here. And I'm adding that above because something I found over the years is as a style sheet gets big, it can get a little tricky to track things down. We might have to just start reading the whole thing to remember where we're going. So I try to keep it in roughly the same order that it shows on the page. That doesn't always work because I don't think we've seen it yet, but we can put a comma here and just do another row altogether and put another element there and another comma. And we can have a big comma separated list of selectors, not just one at a time. Do that for footer, header, and footer because we haven't done it. We don't have the footer on the page yet. Might as well put one on here. So after that nav, there's going to be some sort of main content. And then way down at the bottom, we'll put a footer. Amp hash. And I think I mentioned it before, there are just 3 numbers that I memorized. Instead of memorizing all the codes, some show up a lot more than others. 167, 169, and 176. I found are 3 that show up a lot. So 167, 323, it's not the copyright symbol. And this is what I do. I load it in. It's like, nope, that's the section symbol. Just those 3 that I remember show up a lot. 169. I don't remember which one's which. I just remember the 3 numbers. And then 176 is the degree symbol. Right? The little bitty circle with as a superscript. So there we have a footer and should probably put a paragraph tag around so we have direct access, more direct access to that data. And have like a footer, the paragraph in the footer as a font size of 8 point, maybe something small, appropriate for a footer. Hopefully at this point, y'all can see what the first one I'm going to get to before even getting to any of the fancy layout stuff. Something seems a little bit wrong here, right? Like those are in weird spots on the screen. They're all over at the left. But the header, the main primary header for the page, the navigation can go either way. It could go anywhere, but the header and the footer those seem like they should be centered. So you might want to see ways to center them. And there's multiple ways. But first off, oh, this one worked. What I usually do is set text alignment to center and brings them right over there. Your book has a different way of doing that. The way your book, the textbook likes to do it, everybody's seen that in chapters, they'll make it small and then adjust the margins, set the margins automatic on both sides. I put an element inside of it. So that's why I went back and changed so that it wasn't just footer with some text there. It's footer with a paragraph there. Because then that paragraph counts as the content of the footer. So if the footer centers things, it centers that whole paragraph. It gets rid of sizes and things like that. Same thing with the header. But it's kind of hard to tell the sizing. That's why I like to do things like this. So border, maybe 1 pixel dotted red. Not because I want a red border around everything on the page, but if I put that on there, it makes it easy to see where those elements are. They still cover the whole width of the page. And then commenting things out is easy. On most text editors, you'll just select that line and hit Control/ to comment that out. Yours might be different. If you're not sure what it is, you can almost always find it under the edit menu. And under comment, it should show the keyboard shortcut for commenting things on and off. On most, Control/ is by far the most common with text editors. Unless that was already used for something. Or something that makes more sense. Which usually only happens in really fancy IDEs where we might need to start working with addresses. / makes more sense when we're working with addresses and protocols because / isn't always our comment symbol. But that gives us a quick way to toggle on and off an image of it. Background colors also work really well for that. Background color, yellow. Don't want yellow backgrounds, but it gives us a really quick thing that we can basically toggle on and off by commenting that line out to see where the stuff is, so we can position things relative to it. I'll leave that in there, but I'll probably use the border one. And I'll do the same thing on all of these. Wait, oops. I'll copy that, paste it on those paragraphs and those paragraphs. And basically every single rule will end up with that pasted in there so we can see where the paragraph is, where the header section is, footer section, and get that and see that aligned. We can maybe make that a little bit narrower. We don't necessarily need it to go all the way across the page, right? So with 35%, I'm just going to pick a random number. It doesn't necessarily need to go all the way across. Made it a lot slower, but our center is in a different location. So that's what you're going to find with layouts. Is there is a lot of back and forth trying different things. What if I put on the paragraph instead? And comment this line out so we can see what's what. Header, the header. We do that. Oh, did I not say that? Oh yeah, that's what I was expecting. Still did something a little bit strange with that text alignment property, right? And you're gonna wanna spend time doing this. Even more so than trying to get used to the colors. Go through and make little changes. Let's take the paragraph tags out and see what happens. I've centered it again. Except that I don't have the, there's no paragraph tag, then these properties need to be part of the header itself. Which is then gonna cause a problem with the footer. And you'll see lots and lots and lots of things like this. It's not the whole width again, so it's there in the middle. This is where the margins come in. Margin lift, we set that to automatic. And same thing on the right. This is what the book really likes to do. It is not the only way that we can do that. So there's lots of different options. Now we can see from that with the little border around it, it's centered. The words inside of it are centered. So 2 layers of centering. That's one thing I found over the years. Redundancies are good in CSS. Our element is centered and then the thing's centered in the element. So we have a backup to make sure those words stay in the middle of the page. Set margins and padding. But I got rid of the footer, which trying to keep that in order is going to need these things. And I'm going to go get rid of that other paragraph tag. I just put that in there to make the express a point. Y'all probably noticed I didn't type it the first time. It was like, it might be better to show it with and without that. Sometimes nesting elements in there will be helpful. Other times not so much. You're gonna want to try different things back and forth. And y'all see the process going on here, right? Not making a bunch of changes, not doing a whole bunch of things like, I think this will be good, and this will be good, and this will be good, and then checking it. You want to check every single time. Is cascading, remember, cascading means start at the top level and notify every element on the way to the one that actually needs that property. There was a long running debate. The reason it took so long to standardize the World Wide Web was a debate on whether it would be better to do bubbling or cascading. Bubbling starts at the element that gets the property and then goes up to the top level and tells everything about it along the way. Cascading starts at the top level and tells things about it on the way down. And the primary, that debate went on for so long that machines got faster and faster and faster, and then it didn't matter. And cascading style sheets do both. It bubbles up and then cascades the confirmation on it. So CSS will definitely affect every other element on the page. So you have to watch out for that. A lot of trial and error, and you'll find that if you really want to do it like every time you make a change, run a check to make sure that works. So with here, 20% is probably good for a footer, probably more than is needed. And then that redundancy of align that in the center and set the margins to automatic, the left and right margins to automatic. Do that, and for something like the footer, we probably want a nice big margin above that, right? Because people are going to be finished reading way before they get to the content. The copyright, the bottoms, we need like nice little space there. So maybe the margin top could go 3 elements, 3 EM. I always think elements when I say that. It doesn't actually stand for elements. It stands for EM. But that is the word. But elements make sense in my mind because it's the size of the text. That's the one that was created with the Gutenberg movable type and whatever that was, 1400s. But it's a good size because then all of our sizes are based off of what we did. Well, that did something funny. It's behind the people looking at the TV. It's behind the Zoom profile pictures. Let me move those. Did I make a typo or something? Or, oh, yeah. This should probably be margin right. Notice there's no error messages or anything. Before I do this, if I pull up the inspector and check the console, there's no error messages because I made a typo in the CSS. It just didn't apply a rule there. I don't know what that is. So we do have to manually track down the issues with them. So moved it down a little, lower content. We could probably do more than that. Maybe a bunch of space there. Got those centered. Probably do some stuff with those links, make them look better. And there might be other links, so I don't want to mess up links that are like in the middle of a paragraph, right? But probably not in this case. So those put a background color of forest green. That sounds good. A border. Great. Did it in the wrong order. Get it in the wrong. Top left radius of say 28%. Has made up a number for that. Border top right radius 39%. But they're kind of small, so maybe some padding. Oops. Padding of padding top 2.5 EM. Padding left 1.1 EM. And padding bottom 12 pixels. Oh, we're kind of like I was wanting. Starts to overflow though, right? I mentioned this the other day. You'll want to do some trial and error and check where the overflows are allowed. And they usually make sense. There's no margin below the heading, but we said there's extra space inside the element above it. So there's nothing spreading them out. So it just overflows right onto that thing on top. This is the section where we really have to watch that stuff. Different ways to fix it. I'll put well, I got rid of those paragraph tags. Don't need that. When you know you don't need anything, get rid of it too. We can come back to it. So I had to pause and think for a second. I am very, very much used to using variables here in CSS because we usually, like, we're not going to use every color available on every site, right? There's probably only going to be 3 or 4 colors. So we save them to a variable and use it that way. We'll see variables soon. Calculation and a couple other things. Here we go. Put a margin on the bottom here of that header. I don't know, a big one. 10 lines of text tall. I guess that might be the way to think of that as a height. 10 EM would be 10 lines of text. Which is massive, because we have to be careful with that too. So we put 10 lines of text up at the top of those links, that's a much smaller text, right? So it is relative to the text that's showing. If we made the header bigger, that space would get even bigger then. So since that's a really big one, maybe 4 of those big ones would work. Oh, that's more than I was wanting. I'll just do some pixels, switch it up a little. 21 pixels. Actually, that might work. Sometimes a little bit of overlap will look nice. Like there's some shadows on those things, on those links. Flux shadow. Say 8 pixels, 8 pixels, 9 pixels. Remember, it's down and over. You can always just use extreme numbers to check and see which one it is. Trying to memorize which one's which is just adds an extra layer there, right? Really easy to change one of them to 80 and one of them to 8, and then it's very obvious which one's which. The distance it takes to fade out completely. I'll make that one negative. Probably see why in a second. And some sort of color for that. If red, green, and blue have equal amounts, it's grayscale. If it's all zeros, it's black. If it's all Fs, it's white. So for a shadow, something closer to black, like 23, 23, 23. To give us nice little shadows on those. And set a minimum width of 25%. Probably need more than that. But if I said exactly 25%, I can see right there it goes halfway across the screen. If I said 25%, it'd start doing text wrapping. Say minimum of 25, but if it needs to grow, we can. Somebody when you see like when to use minimum, when to use maximum. And I guess I need to do it on the nav tag, parent nav tag. If I do text align right, we get positioned over there by that other stuff. And I was trying to go for something to look like hills. Could probably spend a little bit more time to get something nice looking there. Has everybody been doing things like this, right? Let's go back to something big there. So 4 elements. Border radius 33%, and background color on this, I'll do RGBA, so some sort of gray, like A2. That would be hexadecimal. Is 160 plus 32 is 192. 192, 192, and then a little bit of transparency on it, so like 5%. I'm trying to make that top part look like a cloud, which doesn't really look very good. Probably should need a darker gray. We go with 92, 92, 92. And try 57% transparency. There we go. And then you can see the lighter and darker colors do it a little bit. Everybody been doing that sort of stuff? A little, if time allows, I know some of us, there's no possible way we can fit stuff like that in our schedule. It takes a while, but that's what, whenever we break off for lab time, that's what I'm kind of expecting you all to do. A little trial and error. And it's gonna be more important in this section than others. So probably turn those borders off now. Might have some more adjustments, so I don't want to delete that property. But for the moment, don't need to see it. Oh. Well, looking at that, I just realized something that might be good. Border radius 50%. To turn that square into a circle. Adding 40 pixels. Background color. Slate blue. That work. Oh, no. That's good blue. Steel blue. There we go. Another little landscape-ish thing. We're not gonna spend a lot of time, but you can start going through adding a little flair here and there and start to get like pictures in it. Little things like that, right? You don't have to do those like that one we looked at that day where it looks like an old oil painting. Just little bits of flair on little things will be a lot of practice. Add a lot of practice and give you ideas on things, even if it wasn't going to be an extreme case of the design stuff. Like just subtle flair that you're going to put in a very professional looking site. Little accents. But random practice, it's good for random practice. Have something in mind and try to duplicate that. Now we need our main content that goes in between there. And that's what it's going to show up on every single page. We're missing that main content between. Now that that basic part's there, I can come over here, the File Explorer, and just make however many copies of that. How many do we need? One, two, three, four, 5 copies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then rename these. So one of them is absolute. And one is relative. What else was there? Loading. See how quickly like the rest of the pages come together? The consistent part, you only need to test that once, then you don't have to copy and paste and do a bunch of adjustments afterwards. Or some people might just go ahead and try to retype it everywhere. Flexible and grid. Then we very quickly get to all of our site name. One more little change. Well, I guess it's in the CSS, so it will still apply everywhere. So if I start checking these, okay, it looks like the other sites work, but those colors look a little strange. The blue looks a little strange. Purple gives me an idea though, with like hills in the springtime with flowers blooming on. So purples and yellows and pinks might be good colors for those links. But the style sheet, there's only one of those, so it'll apply to all of them. So if I do color ink, there we go, and have a hover. When we're hovering over it, switch to yellow. And the anchor tags in the nav element, if we've already visited the site or already visited that other page, we can change the color to lavender. Those are the purples with names are really dark purples. We get different colors look like flowers. Some supposed to look like flowers blooming on the hill was my thought. But we can quickly check and confirm all of our links work before we get very far ahead. Which there's nothing to distinguish the pages except looking at the address bar right now. I guess those colors are awful close to each other, so maybe I will do by that. I've already clicked on all the pages, so they're all visited now. So yeah, I think it's darker. But little things like that. It's good for practice, and it'll give you some ideas on little subtleties you can work in later. Now we can finish out some content for the pages. So index page here. Not much here. Oh, whoops. That's supposed to be a paragraph. Paragraph, not much here. Go to the other pages to see the layouts. Actually, I probably could have copied and pasted the rest of what I'm going to put here. I'm going to do all of this. And a side tag to go down the side. And 1, 2, 3 divisions on the page for 3 divisions of the main content. Yeah, I'll put it up here. So aside. No, your counter is part of the main content. Side tag, some random words, because like we've already seen, if we don't have some words there, the computer's going to decide that the size of the height and width of 0 are sufficient. We don't quite need that. And then I'm going to call all these sections. Section class is first. I think I mentioned this before. We're just going to finish out the typing and then we'll do all the styling after the break. We can work in patterns. The way the computer needs this to be, as far as top to bottom, left to right, is probably not the order we think about it in. And working in patterns we can take advantage of that. Particular something that shows up with coding a lot is we'll have these next 3 section tags are going to be very, very similar. So I might as well go ahead and set them up. And on my text editor, it's Control-Shift-D to duplicate. Just put the cursor in the line, and that's a different keyboard shortcut on every single text editor. So somewhere there's a duplicate or just copy and paste. Every text editor has copy and paste. You know, probably already know how to know the keyboard shortcut for that. And then something that throws people off is it's actually better to work down our columns of text than across. At least being more productive, especially when there's more than 3 of them there. For some of y'all who have had other programming classes, you probably noticed that'll often show up like 20 at a time. And then if you work across, you're constantly changing your frame of mind. We go across here, we think about what the class name should be, or the ID, or all the stuff that goes in there. Then we get over here and change our mindset to what words go in there and all that stuff. And then we come back and do it again. We change our mindset back to what the class name or ID, the class name should be. Then we change our mindset to what the words that go in there are. And we're constantly going back and forth. it can be a lot better to work down the columns than across. So maybe first off, go all the way down and change all those class names. And then come over and add in all the words. But actually, is that the best way to do that? There's nothing that says we have to do our column first, right? Because if we start here on the left and do that, then that next column we need to get to is different. So it can even be better to start on the right-hand side. And then as we work backwards, things are still in the same position. Think about patterns like that. I had one professor when I was at IUS that his favorite saying in programming classes, programmers are lazy and see patterns. So look for patterns that will make what you do easier. Because those are personality traits that lead to the decision to be programmers. So if we start on the right and work down, we can just throw some paragraphs in here. First words, second words. Then there's a paragraph there. Another paragraph there. And paragraph that says third row. So quite a bit going in there. That's what I had in mind. I'm going to shorten that and I'll do some copy and paste to do that in a moment. The column thing doesn't work so well if word wraps on. That's what was throwing me off. So first row, second row, third row was kind of what I meant to type. And I'm just going to copy that over to the next one. So there's a long section, so I'm going to put my cursor where it needs to start and hold shift, and it goes almost to the end. So I'm going to hit end and then use the arrow to bring it back to the part I actually want to copy. In this case, that will make a big difference. I'm going to change that to say row. That will make a big difference because we have to scroll with our mouse or have to scroll to highlight all that. So with the mouse, it's really easy when we start scrolling to lose track of where we're at because the mouse is going to jump with the highlighter. So if I start here and start highlighting and get over here, if I accidentally bring my mouse down a little, it might change where that scroll wheel is. It's hard to get at that end part. So just put your cursor at the start point and hold shift. And it's near the end, so I just went all the way to the end and used arrows to get back to the actual spot. Then copy and paste that. Going down the columns. And now this other column that we need to work down is still in the same spot and still perfectly aligned. If you haven't seen it before, double clicking a word highlights a word. Clicking 3 times highlights the whole line. Including the line being, you'll notice the cursor with the line break is included and I put my cursor on the next line. That can be a very important thing. The second and third, that sounds like good names for those. So we'll have all that stuff, and that's what it'll look like on the home page. I'm going to move this outside of that main element. And normally it would be different stuff, but I'm going to put the same thing. The only thing that's going to change page to page as we look at different layout function features is that that paragraph saying which one it is. So I'll copy that, save this file. Oh, okay. Open folder. Okay. I'll need those open in 2 different text editors. Then we have all of the files right here. Different text editors are different. If anybody's using Sublime like I am, if you click once, you can get to it to edit, but it's not fully open. So if I go click on another one, it switches to the other one. If I double click on it, then it's open. So if I go click on another one, it opens a second tab. So we can have different ways to do that. I believe VS Code does the same thing. And there's different little tricks in different text editors. And I like to put things in the same order. So I'll do the CSS first, then all the HTML pages in the same order that they are in the links to make it easy to find them. Loading, then grid and flex. I think that's the order they were in. So now all those files are in this an order to make it easier to find them instead of having lots of different things. Or that click once is really nice to not have lots and lots of different tabs open. Basically, it treats these are like tabs as well, and you can just open them look at one at a time. I'm going to copy and paste that stuff into the main content on every page. Paste that there. And there. There. And there, and then, oh, actually, this tab goes first. I can see how the links on the background. Just an organization. Over the years, I've found that can make a big difference. There. And then the last one, it's already changed. And then we can go back through those. So kind of work in a pattern and change the paragraph. Notice how it's like set your mind and then do all of that stuff once. And then come back and do all of this. So you're not constantly changing what you're thinking about. It improves productivity. This page demonstrates CSS grid. Here's a page. CSS Flex. Those are really nice. When you see those, a lot of people like to go with those. This page demonstrates loading layouts. Here we have relative positioning. This page is for absolute position. It changes to a whole bunch of files there all at once, right? And they're all connected, so make sure you use save all instead of save. That's a common thing in programming you might not be used to yet. A lot of people take this class for the first time. Some people have had a lot of programming by the time they come in here. So everybody's at a different spot. If you haven't used the save all button before, in software development, that's going to be the button you almost always want to hit. Even if you know for certain you only changed one file, you still want to make sure you hit save all. Save all. Oops, I highlighted on there, covered over the wrong thing. Save all the files. And as you get to more advanced situations, there are also generated files that you did not type. So there might be changes happening in those that you didn't know about. So you want to make sure those are saved as well. So anytime you're doing any sort of programming, make sure you always use the save all button. Even if it is only one file, because one is the type of all. Then we have that stuff. Kind of hard to see what's what. Let's add some quick rules to our CSS to tell what's what. I'll just do background colors for each one now. So there was an aside tag. So the background color to red. And remember, computers are much better at typing than you are. So copy and paste and use predictive text as much as possible. Computers never make typos. Then we have a class called, I forgot what it was called. First, second, and third. So we have a first class, and that one can be orange. Second class, yellow. And our third class, red, orange, yellow, green. Go right across the light spectrum. Oh, something didn't work on the right end last one. Oh, not third. And again, before I reload that page, the error in the CSS, if I open this up and check the console, there's no error messages from it. CSS, it just does it. The rule just, that property just doesn't apply if there's something wrong with it. So we do have to manually track down any issues. There we go. So we can tell things apart. Everything's with the colors, but right now they're all set down the side. We need ways to set those up better. And that's what our main topic for today is. I guess we're done an hour into it. So the first main topic was reviewing things and suggesting you want to do lots of this stuff, just random stuff. Doesn't have to be a whole bunch of pages like this. One page, randomly try CSS. And when we get into the stuff after a break, you'll see this is one that little changes have big effects somewhere completely, that seems completely separated from where you're working at. So there's a lot of back and forth. But we can look at that after a break and start setting up the positions for these things. 10 minutes sound good to everybody? Okay, my laptop says 2:09, so we'll get back to it at 2:19.